Times Square. Well, if you've been watching or listening to this show for any length of time, you know that we like to, I don't know, have a little more fun than some people in the conservative media realm. And almost every week, we want to make sure that at some point in time, no matter how bad the headlines are and no matter how important the issues are, that we're delving into a little bit of something that'll give you a giggle. Because life is too short not to have one, at least every now and then. And someone who has become a fast fan favorite around these parts is the comedian Nick Peterson, and he joins us now. Nick, it is a pleasure to welcome you officially for the first time as a guest to That Kevin Show.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
If people watch your stuff, and I want them to go to YouTube, The Nick Peterson, Instagram, The Nick Peterson, go look at the stuff. But if you've watched over the last few months, you've seen some of Nick's work here. What inspires you? What drives you when you're sitting around having your cup of coffee on Monday morning and you're sketching out? Okay, I want to do a couple of pieces this week, but I don't. The page is blank. Where do you go for your inspiration to start pulling on?
Yeah, good question. Really, it's all about bringing people joy, right? That's what drives me. Certainly don't do it for the money. So it's all about making people happy. And I think over the last I've been doing them for about 8 years. And I've dived in a little bit more in the past couple years and honed in on what I think people seem to enjoy the most. And that seems to be Christian content and political content, and finding what's missing is a lot of Christian humor. I think a lot of people think, and I get a lot of comments that my videos, my Christian content is blasphemy, and I think it's because they're so used to anything Christian related being so serious. And I spend a lot of time and effort to make sure that I have everything factually correct, and then I weave in the comedy from there. So I try to find those holes.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think it was Seinfeld that said this, but there's truth in every comic. And in fact, truth is what drives the most comedic elements of most comedy, because it's either an exaggeration of a truth or it's a narrowing down to seeing a truth that maybe you don't see on the surface easily. But there's something inherently just that people just know on the inside shouldn't be the way it is. And then comedy shines a light on it and goes, hey, guess what? And it's almost like an emotional release when you stumble across it. You did a 3 minutes, which is your 60 minutes parody of CBS's show, and you did one on Zelensky, and some of the questions that you posed to him, average people have sat there and thought these very questions. And to just even have somebody symbolically sitting there and posing the questions, I think brought a lightness to people's heart, because they're like, yes, somebody gets it. Somebody understands me a little bit better than what the current media scene seems to.
Right. I did a whole series of those with Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. And that was kind of the theme there, is to try to ask the questions that the American people are really asking, and that journalists won't. So, and then you spin the humor from there.
Well, they weren't willing to in the previous administration, I think. So let me ask you this: does the new administration make things harder because they're going to try to play by a more honest set of rules? Do you think?
For comedy, yes, yes, and I think the whole last administration was a whole lot easier to pick on too. So
yeah, well, they gave you a lot of material. People have asked me all the time, Kevin, would you rather have Trump or Biden in office? And I said, well, from what's good for the country, I want Trump to be there. But he makes my job a lot harder because the day he gets elected, I don't have the funny clown show to talk about anymore. And that's what I've had a lot of fun with. When you go outside the political realm, because you've done spoofs on The Chosen, you've done parodies on Bible characters having podcasts. There's a wide variety of stuff. Do you sit and think like, well, how would Esau respond to Abraham in a discussion about birthright as opposed to Isaac? Like what is the variance here? And do you do some method of getting in their heads as you're writing the scripts?
Absolutely. So first thing I do is always go to the Bible and I start reading the story. And I read through the story, make sure I have all the facts correct, and then I'll go online. I'll read articles. I'll read any kind of uh, you know any information there that can help me expand on the characters. And so usually I keep it to 3 or 4 characters, and that allows me to kind of sit in their shoes and how would they respond, like you said, or what would they say in this situation that would be funny. And so sometimes I think it's probably closer to the truth than we got to remember that they were people too.
Yeah, and I think that when you've come out of just an entirely churched background and thinking about these, I think they've been largely sanitized. Did Moses pick his nose? Probably, but does anybody ever think about that? And it's not necessarily edifying, but but he probably did.
Right.
Who knows? Um,
Yeah.
Something else that's a signature of yours, and I think this is one of the most important elements in comedic delivery, whether it's sketch, whether it's stand up, whether it's a script that's written for film, timing, 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 timing in the delivery, how the lines are delivered, and the timing of the interaction from one character to the next. You seem to do that at an exceptionally higher level than almost any comedic source that is out there. And I really think that coupled with your kind of dry sense of humor is one of those things where even if you watch one of your sketches one time, you miss out on some of the stuff because there's so much loaded in there. Did you always have that sense of comedic timing, or was that something you learned and worked on over the years?
That's something definitely learned over the years. Not only in I plan it now ahead of time, but also in editing too. And that was, something that takes some time. Learning how to, chop up a comedy skit. And there's some skill in that, that's something you definitely have to learn. So, but yes, I plan it all from the get go. Every look, every pause, every joke. And that's why they take me a little bit longer to make. I'm not able to crank out content on a daily basis. It can take me 3-4 weeks. The one I'm working on now has been about a little over a month. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's just it's the way it goes. But I prefer to put out something that is, like you said, packed with content and comedy, as opposed to something that's just filmed on a cell phone and cranked out in a couple hours.
Yeah. There seems to be an entirely new kind of swath of comedic input that's coming primarily through the internet. This is one of the reasons why I want to take your stuff and amplify it to TV and radio, because I think more people need to know about it. But the internet has allowed some really kind of hidden talents to be discovered. I'd love to know if there are people that you watch that you learn things from, and just observing how they do their craft. And we'll take a break here, and when we come back, I want to know also what were your comedic influences growing up? Did you have a healthy dose of SNL? Were there stand-up guys that you liked? Where did the inner sanctum of Nick Peterson's brain originate from? We'll get into all of that on the other side of this, and of course, we be watching, because on assignment desk weekend and in our cold opens, sometimes Nick's work, the handiwork, is there. We are very, very proud to put that forward and encourage you to check out his work and tell others about it.
Stick around for more of That Kevin next. That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.